Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 306 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where, visible or invisible, none could pass my co-host unheeded.
First time I've been described like that, but Alan, I do believe you're referring to me as a vulture.
Maybe.
But can I at least have 3 heads?
Well, sure, if you're going to be a vulture, giving you 3 heads just it seems fair. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I am Don Marshall, the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy, and I'm here with the man of the West, who better have something nice to say about me next, Alan Sisto.
So nothing about feeling your will waver and crumble into fear? No?
I would prefer the opposite, but,
okay.
Let's just see how the episode goes,
Fair enough. Folks, join us as we stick with Sam and his highly unlikely quest in the second part of the Tower of Cirith Ungol, the first chapter in Book 6 of The Lord of the Rings.
And no matter how you got here, you are all welcome here in the common room, here at the Prancing Pony podcast. We are reading and talking our way. I was going to say joking, but,
maybe even insulting our way.
Well, I feel like most of that is me.
Well, usually. I've turned it around this time around. Yeah. You can get yours, buddy.
We're doing all of that, continuing our way through Middle-earth with lots of speculations and, of course, bad jokes along the way.
What would our show be without bad jokes? Folks, we love deep dives into the lore, discussing our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
College course. That's what your podcast would be without.
That's true. Without the bad jokes. You're right.
You're just a college course. Mm-hmm. All right. But of course, with the jokes, we try and keep things light and fun. Just a couple of friends chatting at a pub, and we're really glad you've joined us.
Indeed we are, and I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time for, well, honestly, this is one of my favorite intro segments, and we don't do it often enough, questions before bedtime.
I absolutely love this question, and this segment, basically, if you've never listened to us before, this is the segment where we get to answer the questions of some of the youngest listeners out there tonight, and we have a really good one. We're going to let her introduce herself.
Dear Prancing Pony Podcast, greetings. I'm Stephanie, and I live in California. I actually have 2 questions. 1, how did orcs learn to speak English? And 2, which place would you like to live in? A, Saruman's Tower, B, Rivendell, C, the Shire, D, Woodland Realm, E, Barad-dûr, F, Gollum's Cave. I can't wait to hear your answers. Namarie.
Oh, man, that's
Stephanie.
Great. Wow.
Stephanie, well-spoken, amazing pronunciation, and you said goodbye in Elvish. That is awesome.
That's a winning question right there.
Yes,
That's why we allow 2 in this case. Yeah.
I will take the second question first, just because I think it's very easy for me. I would live in Rivendell. However, I have often said that I don't actually want to live in Middle-earth because as nice as it would be, I would eventually get bored of wherever I lived and want to adventure out. And I'm very not athletic or adventurous or anything.
If you were an elf, you could just take a ship to the other side. And
well, if I was an elf,
if you're living in Middle Earth, you should get to pick, right?
I'm assuming that I, Don Marshall, am just going to be plopped down in the middle of Rivendell, and I feel like after a while I'd just be bored and be like, hey, I'm going to go try and find the Balrog again. So Rivendell is my answer, but my real answer is I'd probably wind up breaking something and wind up in whatever version of the Middle-earth hospital exists. So maybe the Houses of Healing and
hope that Aragorn is somewhere around with his
Yes, of course.
Well, first of all, I have to say it was very interesting to hear the list of Stephanie's choices, right?
Yeah.
She starts out with Orthanc, Saruman's Tower. I'm going to pass. I also love the way she said, B, Rivendell, C, the Shire, D, Woodland Realm. Yeah. like nobody wants to live there. Like Woodland Realm, whatever, man.
I mean, look, there's spiders and there's Thranduil.
There's exactly. I'm not sure I really want to hang out with Thranduil. He's not the greatest of guys, frankly.
He's not. Although, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, Stephanie kind of makes an interesting point by not really actually making the point, and it's just dawned on me now. Maybe I do want to live in Orthanc. If there's nothing in it, I've basically inherited a skyscraper to myself.
True. Well, if you want to inherit a skyscraper, what about Barad-dûr? I mean, I don't know. You got to clean the place up. It's going to be a little messy. Orc entrails all over the place.
Speaking of orc entrails everywhere.
I want some more choices. I mean, how about the White Tower in Minas Tirith? That might be a good option. But you know what? Of the choices she's given.
Yes. You've limited us, and now we're sort of getting into the nitty gritty.
If I have to choose, the answer is really obvious for me. I am a hobbit at heart, so I'm going to choose the Shire. Mm-hmm. Good food, good friends. Also, people that tend not to congregate too often. Like, you're okay to live by yourself, like Bilbo did and like Frodo did. And you can have your friends come over when you want them to show up instead of when they knock on the door and you're like, what are you doing here?
There we go. There we go. Okay, great part of that second half of the question.
The real question she asked.
All right. So, in the interest of full disclosure, we have researched this beforehand, and I just have to thank you, Alan, for picking this particular question because it's so nuanced and it's so much fun to answer. Because
it really is.
Let's just say Alice would be jealous of the rabbit hole that I fell down on this one. So,
I imagine so.
Let's begin. Orcs and Uruk-hai know how to speak the common tongue. We know this. We have seen it. We have read it. It is referred to as Westron, the language.
Exactly. I mean, it's translated as English for us in the books. So, Stephanie, just to be clear, the orcs of various kinds, the Moria goblins, the Uruk-hai, all of them, they don't actually speak English. They speak Westron, but Tolkien translates Westron as English. So I know what you mean. How do they speak this common tongue that men and elves and dwarves and hobbits all speak? So we do hear orcs speaking the common tongue in the Two Towers. Pippin has that conversation with the orcs that captured him and Merry. One of the orcs sitting nearby laughed and said something to a companion in his abominable tongue. Then we read, "Rest while you can, you little fool," he uttered to Pippin in the common tongue, which he made as detestable as his own language.
Right. So we have distinctly an Uruk-hai speaking two different languages.
Right. A bilingual orc.
Yes. So we overhear the conversation as well from Sam's perspective in Return of the King. As usual, they were quarreling, and being of different breeds, they used the common speech after their fashion. So we have established there is an Orcish language, there's a common speech, and then they have different dialects almost. And in Appendix F, we get this. And these creatures, being filled with malice, hating even their own kind, quickly developed as many barbarous dialects as there were groups or settlements of their race, so that their Orcish speech was of little use to them in intercourse between different tribes. So it was that in the Third Age, orcs used for communication between breed and breed the Westron tongue. And many indeed of the older tribes, such as those that still lingered in the north and in the Misty Mountains, had long used the Western tongue as their native language, though in such fashion as to make it hardly less unlovely than Orcish.
Hardly less unlovely. I like that. I like that a lot. I'm also thinking of Orcish. I can't help but think of like the Warhammer 40K orcs.
Yeah, yes.
Red goes faster. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. They're primitive. They speak a common language. They can yell at the Imperial Guard in languages they understand. But
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, lots and lots of different languages, and it's literally become impossible for them to communicate with each other using those dialects. So that's why we see, for instance, in the Merry and Pippin situation, we see three different groups of orcs, right? We see the Moria goblins who have come down and chased in order to kind of get vengeance. Then we see Saruman's Uruk-hai, but then we also see Uruks sent from Mordor. So we have three different groups, and they can't communicate with each other except in the Westron.
Right. So it almost becomes a necessity.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question, Stephanie. Fantastic. However, I do have a part 3 to this because let's just say not everyone knows to look at the appendix when they try and answer that question on various internet forums. Bear with me, because I have with me the best other reasons that orcs know how to speak the common tongue Westron.
Is this like a David Letterman top 10 list?
100%. And next week, we will have our stupid pet tricks featuring Bill the Pony.
All right.
All right.
So talk to us about these great reasons why the orcs know how to speak Westron.
Number 1, and this I saw many times, and it actually does kind of make sense, is that the orcs learned it from the captured elves and humans that they forced into slavery, as well as potentially from other orcs that were out in the Misty Mountains and out in... So basically, they learned it from themselves or learned it from the people that they captured.
Okay, fair enough.
It is also theorized that perhaps the orcs have a caste system, and only the smartest ones were taught in the common tongue. So like the chieftains or the really high up ones.
Can I poke a hole in that one real quick?
By all means.
Because we're going to see in tonight's episode a conversation between a very high ranking orc, Shagrat, the guy who runs the Tower of Cirith Ungol, and Snaga, which, by the way, just means slave or servant. So, in fact, it may not even be his name because there was another orc named Snaga that Ugluk spoke to
that's right.
way back then. And it just means slave or servant. It's clearly like the caste system that you're talking about, right? It's like a lower rank, but they can speak the common tongue too. So
there we go.
Okay. It's a nice idea, though. I like it. And maybe, sure enough, the ones that are slaving away in the black pits, they don't need to know the common tongue.
Yeah. All right. So number 3, the ring gives you the power to understand all speech. So maybe Sam is fluent in Orc after all.
Okay, that's possible. It doesn't explain the Merry and Pippin situation, but it does maybe give us a bit of an insight possibly into that whole Shagrat Gorbag conversation that we had at the end of book 4. Yeah.
And finally, and I wish I was kidding, but I saw multiple versions of this kind of comment. Perhaps Sauron started some kind of school or learning system in Mordor and let the orc chieftains take night classes after a long day of training the other orcs.
You know, the funny thing is about that, I mean, that's hilarious, and yet it also seems not entirely unreasonable.
No.
Because you also realize the orcs know some history.
Yeah.
Like they recognize, in The Hobbit, they recognize the sword beater, biter, they recognize Glamdring and Orcrist. They know about its history. So they know about the goblin wars of the First Age. Right? There's even what appears to be a level of education, at least with the Shagrat Gorbag dialogue that we had at the end of book 4, where Gorbag was trying to explain to Shagrat, all about how this is probably an elven warrior and here's why, and you need to think this through. He's basically rationalizing all of this, going, we'll get to that tonight.
We'll get to,
we really will. It's good stuff. But that's interesting. Now, I have to say, we still don't really have the answer as to how they learned it, but I like these. I like these as potential options. Certainly, realistically, learning it from people that they've captured makes logical sense. And then the idea of at least some form of education, obviously very little. It's not as though Sauron is trying to create a literate society that is developing technology and growing civilization and art and architecture and all of this. None of that's happening. But if he's at least helping them learn enough Westron so that they can function as a dominant force, as so that they can, capture and extract information from humans and from hobbits and from elves and things like that. Yeah, I can see that working. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've kind of got a decent thought process as to, well, this probably makes the most sense-ish.
Yeah. We don't have a clear answer as to the exact methodology, but that certainly is a possible conclusion.
Yeah. Fantastic question, though.
Absolutely. Thank you for both questions, Stephanie and Namarie.
Namarie. All right. So let's go ahead and get into tonight's discussion. Alan, where did we leave off?
We left off with Sam about to do something very, very difficult indeed. I'm going to go ahead and skip the first paragraph after we left off last time and catch up with Sam as he creeps on. He crept on, and as he went, he wondered how many orcs lived in the tower with Shagrat, and how many Gorbag had, and what they were quarreling about, if that was what was happening. Shagrat's company had seemed to be about 40, and Gorbag's more than twice as large. But of course, Shagrat's patrol had only been a part of his garrison. Almost certainly they were quarreling about Frodo and the spoil. For a second, Sam halted, for suddenly things seemed clear to him, almost as if he had seen them with his eyes. The mithril coat! Of course, Frodo was wearing it and they would find it. And from what Sam had heard, Gorbag would covet it. But the orders of the Dark Tower were, at present, Frodo's only protection, and if they were set aside, Frodo might be killed out of hand at any moment. "Come on, you miserable sluggard," Sam cried to himself. "Now for it!" He drew Sting and ran towards the open gate. But just as he was about to pass under its great arch, he felt a shock, as if he had run into some web like Shelob's, only invisible. He could see no obstacle, but something too strong for his will to overcome barred the way. He looked about, and then, within the shadow of the gate, he saw the 2 watchers. They were like great figures seated upon thrones. Each had 3 joined bodies and 3 heads facing outward and inward and across the gateway. The heads had vulture faces, and on their great knees were laid claw-like hands. They seemed to be carved out of huge blocks of stone, immovable, and yet they were aware. Some dreadful spirit of evil vigilance abode in them. They knew an enemy. Visible or invisible, none could pass unheeded. They would forbid his entry or his escape. Hardening his will, Sam thrust forward once again and halted with a jerk, staggering as if from a blow upon his breast and head. Then, greatly daring because he could think of nothing else to do, answering a sudden thought that came to him, he drew slowly out the phial of Galadriel and held it up. Its white light quickened swiftly, and the shadows under the dark arch fled. The monstrous watchers sat there cold and still, revealed in all their hideous shape. For a moment, Sam caught a glitter in the black stones of their eyes, the very malice of which made him quail. But slowly, he felt their will waver and crumble into fear. He sprang past them, but even as he did so, thrusting the vial back into his bosom, he was aware, as plainly as if a bar of steel had snapped to behind him, that their vigilance was renewed. And from those evil heads there came a high, shrill cry that echoed in the towering walls before him. Far up above, like an answering signal, a harsh bell clanged a single stroke.
Good stuff there.
All right.
So last week, Sam was on his way in, heard the fighting on the other side of the walls in the courtyard. Right. We pick up with him basically halfway down the path as he sees this pair of orcs heading out to the gate and towards the road.
Right. He doesn't see the arrows themselves, but it's very clear that these two orcs have been shot down. Poor Lagduf and Musgash, as we'll find out their names later.
So Sam gets a little bit closer to the wall, and for a moment he's wondering, oh, can I climb this? He can't. It's 30 feet high, roughly 10 meters for you folks that use the metric system. Is that what it's called these days?
That's correct. Okay. It's not the imperial system. That's what we use. Also known as the system that makes no sense. Yeah.
Well, America. Yeah, no, there is, of course, no way he's getting up there. No. There's no foothold, and it goes up to an overhang. So,
exactly. Yeah, now, believe it or not, that 30-foot high thing is actually easier than it would have been in one of the drafts. There we read, there was no purchase in the smooth rock or masonry, and 100 feet above, the wall hung beetling out. Now, beetling in this context means overhanging, so it's the same concept. So, like it or not, Sam, the only way into this fortress is the gate.
And to the part where you read, we start reading about the thoughts crossing Sam's mind as he nears the gate. And of course, his first thought is about the size of the forces currently in the tower.
Exactly. How many orcs am I going to have to kill? I mean, the first thing he thinks about is Shagrat's forces. He had about 40 orcs with him. Gorbag had more than double, so more than 80, so maybe even as many as 100. But of course, that would be all of Gorbag's forces because he was coming from Minas Morgul, while Shagrat would have had a lot more guys back in the tower.
Yeah, his next thought, of course, was, what are they fighting about? This is weird. He knows there has to be something they're fighting over, and that means the mithril coat.
That's right. I mean, after all, Sam has the ring, he has the vial, and he has Sting.
Yeah.
I'm sure the rest of the police are a little upset about that, but...
Yeah.
How many Gordon Sumner jokes can we make? Hang on, folks. I'm sure there's more.
You do realize you made a Sting joke in a series of books that has a literal eye watching you.
Yes.
In some interpretations. So fully on
Always
brand.
Watching. Yes.
Fully on brand. Every step you... Anyway, Sam is sort of hoping that the orders from Barad-dûr will keep Frodo alive for at least a little while.
Well, yeah, at least as long as it takes him to find him, we hope.
Yeah.
Now, even with all those thoughts running through his head, he, of course, knows what he has to do. And then, poor Sam, he pushes himself with what I can only think of as a little of his gaffer's wisdom, right? Calling himself a miserable sluggard. Sounds like one of his dad's names for him, frankly.
Yeah. It's like that tough love, that self-loathing kind of thing. Like, you listen here, you stupid person that is also me. I'm very stupid, but that doesn't mean I can't do this.
That's right. Like, I still have to do this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Self-deprecating in the best possible way.
Absolutely.
So he draws Sting, which I feel like it's you'd think it's glowing like mad, but we're gonna see.
Yeah. We
heads to the gate, only to get kind of like bounced back, some invisible spider web.
I want the sound effects.
I always pictured it as like a dead silence. Like the second you hit it, it's like, oh, my hearing's gone.
Oh, like everything's gone. Like you're all of a sudden sort of in a vacuum. Like,
Yep.
Okay, interesting. I like that.
So he can't see anything in the way, but he is definitely blocked.
And then when he looks around, of course, he spots them, the two watchers. And man, the physical description of these things, and no, they don't look like you, I promise, is really, really creepy, right? Each is this huge figure sitting on a throne, and each figure has 3 bodies joined together with 3 heads facing in these different directions, right?
The heads are facing out, in, and across the gate. And these heads are, they said, vultures' heads with claws resting on their knees. These aren't just like complex gargoyles. You're led to believe that they are aware. The text tells us that there is some dreadful spirit of evil vigilance lived in them.
Ooh, and we will talk about that in a little bit. They could tell the difference between friend and foe. So it was sort of like a very early IFF system. It's by the way, that's just a military term for identify friend or foe. It's what we have in airplanes and things like that, so we know who's who. But here's the thing. Even being invisible wouldn't help Sam here.
Yeah, and it almost feels as like they have the power to prevent passage one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely they do. So Sam, again, for like the umpteenth time this chapter, just sucks it all up, right? He exercises a massive amount of willpower, and he tries again with the same exact result. It feels like he's been hit in the chest and in the head.
And then the thought comes to him, seems to have sort of come from outside of him.
I think it has.
Yeah, which we've seen a few times. Maybe Spabimmy, maybe something else. Who knows? Yeah. So he dares to pull out the Phial of Galadriel and holds it up.
Yes. Now remember, Sam is the one who remembered that they had the phial back when he and Frodo were in Shelob's lair. Don, would you take us back to that moment?
Yes, all the way back in Book 4.
Yeah.
"It's a trap," said Sam, and he laid his hand upon the hilt of his sword, and as he did so, he thought of the darkness of the barrow whence it came. "I wish old Tom was near us now," he thought. Then, as he stood, darkness about him, and a blackness of despair and anger in his heart, it seemed to him that he saw a light in his mind, almost unbearably bright at first, as a sunray to the eyes of one long hidden in a windowless pit. Then the light became color, green, gold, silver, white. Far off, as in a little picture drawn by elven fingers, he saw the Lady Galadriel standing on the grass in Lorien, and gifts were in her hands. "And you, ring-bearer," he heard her say, remote but clear, "for you I have prepared this." The bubbling hiss drew nearer, and there was a creaking as of some great jointed thing that moved with slow purpose in the dark. A reek came on before it. "Master, master," cried Sam, and life and urgency came back into his voice. "The lady's gift, the star glass, a light to you in dark places, she said it would be. The star glass." For those listening on the podcast, Alan is holding up his phone flashlight, and it's hilarious.
I'm just trying to help you get into the moment, Don. Just trying anything I can. All right.
Really capturing the essence of Tolkien's works here.
That's right. So Sam, of course, used the vial himself later on. This was after Shelob attacked Frodo, and this moment came right after he'd used Sting to wound her. Even as Sam himself crouched, looking at her, seeing his death in her eyes, a thought came to him, as if some remote voice had spoken, and he fumbled in his breast with his left hand and found what he sought. Cold and hard and solid it seemed to his touch in a phantom world of horror, the Phial of Galadriel. "Galadriel," he said faintly, and then he heard voices far off but clear, the crying of the elves as they walked under the stars in the beloved shadows of the Shire, and the music of the elves as it came through his sleep in the Hall of Fire in the house of Elrond. "Gilthoniel a Elbereth." And then his tongue was loosed, and his voice cried in a language which he did not know. "A Elbereth Gilthoniel, o Menel Palandiriel, Lenallon si di Ngurothos, a Tyronin Fanuilos." And I'm sorry, folks, I could not read that in Sam's voice. It's so hard to read Elfish in Sam's sort of rustic accent.
You did amazing.
Well,
bravo. Let's keep going. That was
I do love
awesome.
reading Elvish. So back to the text, and this is again back into the other text. This is not in book 6, this is book 4. "And with that, he staggered to his feet and was Samwise the Hobbit, Hamfast's son again," which we talked about last week. Sam then says, "Now come, you filth," he cried. "You've hurt my master, you brute, and you'll pay for it. We're going on, but we'll settle with you first. Come on and taste it again." As if his indomitable spirit had set its potency in motion. The glass blazed suddenly like a white torch in his hand. It flamed like a star that, leaping from the firmament, sears the dark air with intolerable light. No such terror out of heaven had ever burned in Shelob's face before. The beams of it entered into her wounded head and scored it with unbearable pain, and the dreadful infection of light spread from eye to eye. She fell back, beating the air with her forelegs, her sight blasted by inner lightnings, her mind in agony. Then, turning her maimed head away, she rolled aside and began to crawl, claw by claw, towards the opening in the dark cliff behind. Yeah, the vial. Oh, man,
Yeah.
gotta love this thing.
Good stuff. Good stuff. He knows this thing has power against evil, and so he
Yeah.
uses it, and it's
Exactly.
growing. The light grows quickly, the shadow
Yes.
goes away, and the Watchers aren't any more attractive in the light. All their hideous shape.
I feel called out. That's why I like the dark, frankly, Don. All their hideous shape.
All right.
So Sam catches the malice in the eyes of these things, but the malice doesn't last long, right? He senses their pending failure, their will turning into fear.
Yeah, and he makes it through
Yeah.
his fear and
Mhm.
theirs. He puts the file back in his pocket, but he knows, of course, this is not over.
No,
He can't just turn around and go back.
no, he absolutely not. And then he hears them cry out. I've got to imagine this sounds a little like a Nazgul cry, which Jackson did that certainly in the films, made it sound like that shrill, high-pitched cry. Clearly some sort of an alarm, and a bell signals above.
Yeah, so let's talk about these Watchers a bit. Who made them? When? How do they do sort of what they do?
Oh, I can't wait to do that. But folks, we're going to go ahead and do that after the break. Now, soon we'll get back to Sam ringing the front doorbell and that sidebar on the Watchers. But before we do, we want to remind you there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just me and Don.
The PPP has an amazing listener community. They are always coming up with great questions and discussions across all social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony podcast. You can follow the page and get the new episodes and any sort of news, but you're really going to want to join the group to get involved in some great discussions.
Or if you would prefer Reddit, you can find us there at r/PrancingPonyPod. On Twitter and Instagram, we are simply at PrancingPonyPod.
Same with TikTok, by the way. And if you want daily Tolkien content, check out Today's Tolkien Times on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. It's my new short format daily show with everything from Word Nerd Wednesday to Fandom Friday. Be sure to check it out at youtube.com/@TolkienTimes and follow @TolkienTimes on all your social media. And folks, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast. It's what helps us make this show better every single year. And when you join, you get the best Discord community around. Sorry, folks, it really is. And it includes live episode recordings and hangouts every single month, episode postscripts, ad-free episodes, and a whole lot more.
You can also become part of our Questions After Nightfall episode, or even join us as a guest in the North Wing. So please go to patreon.com/prancingponypod to show your support and join the Fellowship of the Podcast.
And of course, you can always help us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and a rating over on Spotify. And please keep on recommending us to your friends. Well, let's go ahead and get back to that sidebar. So we started, our first question was who made them? Now, there are some folks out there who make the argument that the Watchers were made by the men of Gondor when they first built the Tower of Cirith Ungol. I can understand that. And they base this on a line that we'll get to actually later tonight. Snaga is arguing with Gorbag when he says, "There's a great fighter about, one of those bloody-handed elves or one of the filthy Tarks. He's coming here, I tell you. You heard the bell. He's got past the Watchers, and that's Tark's work." Now, quick aside, we learn in Appendix F that in this jargon, Tark, man of Gondor, was a debased form of Tarkil, a Quenya word used in Westron for one of Númenorian descent. So they're talking about a man of Gondor.
Love that he invented slang as well.
I know.
So great.
It is awesome.
all of these arguments, the argument here goes that that's Tark's work is referring to the Watchers themselves, but it seems, at least to me, that Tark's work is referring to getting past the Watchers.
Yeah, I think I really reached that same conclusion. Just the way that's phrased, it seems to me like it's not the Watchers that are the Tark's work, but it's somehow getting past the Watchers. But let's not take Don and Alan's word for it, folks. We read in Sauron Defeated, and that's volume 9 of the History of Middle-earth, that earlier manuscripts had this line as, that's elvish work, or that's wizard's work. So clearly it's Tark's work in this context to get past them, because nobody is trying to make the allegation that elves or wizards actually crafted these things.
Exactly. As for who would have made them, I think it's safe to say it was either like Sauron or the Witch King. Because
I think those are the only two that could, right?
Yeah. You think it would probably require Sauron's power to sort of imbue these inanimate objects with spirits, sort of like what we read about in the Silmarillion with things like werewolves, which are described. I think it's fell beasts inhabited by dreadful spirits that Sauron had imprisoned in their bodies.
Exactly. And he definitely had that power. And I would have thought the same thing. Oh, it's got to be Sauron. But then I remembered the Witch King has some power too. Remember, the Barrow Wights were actually spirits sent by the Witch King to inhabit the bodies buried in the Barrow Downs. So clearly he had invested some skill points in necromancy as well. So I think it could be either one.
That is entirely possible.
Yeah,
I love that. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so skill points aside, let's get to the when. So the Nazgul capture Minas Ithil, and we're sort of presuming the tower as well.
Because remember, we knew the treachery got it into their hands. We discussed about that the last episode. Right. Yeah.
So TA about 2002. So it could have been over 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, or sometime since then. But if it was Sauron, here's the tricky part. He didn't come back to Mordor until Third Age 2942, which is only, it's a little more than 75 years ago, right? We're in 3019. So they could be a lot more recent, somewhere between 75 and 1,000 years.
Very small margin, all things considered,
just a little bit.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So how do they do what they do? Well, the text doesn't really tell us too much. Maybe there's an invisible barrier. Maybe it's a mental or physical block.
That's the thing. I mean, there are times where this strikes me as being very similar to what people encounter when they encounter the Nazgul and the fear and despair that they cause.
Yeah.
Or even the effects of people who've suffered under the Black Breath. So it feels very emotional or willpower related or mental related. And certainly it responds to the vial, which it makes me feel like this is more of an aura, almost an area of effect spell that can be countered rather than an invisible physical force or wall. Despite the seemingly physical impact it had on Sam, I still lean towards the idea of some sort of mental, almost a field of control.
Yeah. One more thing before we wrap up the sidebar and we move on. Just some interesting history on these sorts of things.
Yeah.
The vulture-headed bodies, Hammond and Skull in their Reader's Companion tell us the bird-headed gods were depicted in ancient Egypt, three-dimensional or in profile, in low relief or painted, but always as individual figures.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so he's maybe taking some inspiration from this idea of these bird-headed figures, but now he's combining them, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. They also go on to point out, Hammond and Skull, that is, that other ancient cultures where these hybrid figures appeared, including Mesopotamia. They say at Sargon's palace, built circa 700 BC at Khorsabad in northern Iraq, and I may not be pronouncing that correctly, winged human-headed bulls were carved in high relief at the entrance to the citadel. They also tell us that griffin-headed human figures representing genii or demons appear in other Assyrian reliefs. Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's one thing about Tolkien. He definitely pulls from all over the world and all around history. He knows so much. It's not a surprise. Yeah. All right. Well, Don, would you pick us up after Sam set off that car alarm?
Absolutely.
Go ahead and start us off where he notices what these groups of orcs are wearing.
2 liveries, Sam noticed, one marked by the red eye, the other by a moon disfigured with a ghastly face of death. But he did not stop to look more closely. Across the court, a great door at the foot of the tower stood half open, and a red light came through. A large orc lay dead upon the threshold. Sam sprang over the body and went in. And then he peered about at a loss. A wide and echoing passage led back from the door towards the mountainside. It was dimly lit with torches flaring in brackets on the walls. But its distant end was lost in gloom. Many doors and openings could be seen on this side and that, but it was empty, save for 2 or 3 more bodies sprawling on the floor. From what he had heard of the captain's talk, Sam knew that, dead or alive, Frodo would most likely be found in a chamber high up in the turret far above. But he might search for a day before he found the way. "It'll be near the back, I guess," muttered Sam. "The whole tower climbs backwards like. And anyway, I'd better follow these lights." He advanced down the passage, but slowly now, each step more reluctant. Terror was beginning to grip him again. There was no sound save the rap of his feet, which seemed to grow to an echoing noise, like the slapping of great hands upon the stones. The dead bodies, the emptiness, the dank black walls that in the torchlight seemed to drip with blood, the fear of sudden death lurking in doorway or shadow, and behind all his mind, the waiting, watchful malice of the gate. It was almost more than he could screw himself to face. He would have welcomed a fight, with not too many enemies at a time, rather than face this hideous, brooding uncertainty. He forced himself to think of Frodo, lying bound or in pain or dead somewhere in this dreadful place. He went on.
Indeed, he went on. Now, in that part that I had you skip, Sam acknowledges what's just happened. I've rung the front doorbell, and he expects somebody, understandably so, to come challenge him. And he even wants Shagrat to know the great elf warrior has called. I mean, he is definitely in full-on bring-it mode.
Yeah, there's no answer, of course. He moves forward into the courtyard. The courtyard's filled with dead orcs. The archers have knives in their back. Everyone's been shot down or hewn, and it's awful.
It is, and there's singles and pairs. The pairs around all over the place are in various stages of killing each other, right? They're throttling each other, dead, or they're stabbing each other, they're dead, or they're grappling and they're dead. Basically, they're all dead, but you can see that they've been fighting each other. And blood is everywhere to the extent that the stones are slippery. I mean, this is like workplace hazard, man.
Yeah, I'm sure if OSHA came in, they'd be none too happy.
Your drainage system needs to be improved here.
Absolutely.
You're going to have a lot of workman's comp claims. I think we're going to need to shut this place down. Can I see your license? I want to know what Shagrat's answer to that would be. Here's my license.
Yeah. This is my knife. I've named it license. So Sam gets closer and notices the 2 different groups identified by their livery. The Red Eye, which would be Shagrat's crew. This is the force that occupied the Tower of Cirith Ungol. And then the Moon with the face of death. That's Gorbag's squad, which, as we mentioned before, is about 80-ish, maybe more strong. These are the ones that serve the Witch King and come from Minas Morgul.
That's right. But Sam keeps moving. He's got a job to do. And frankly, inspecting dead orcs is not that job. He sees an open door. He jumps over the dead orc that's on the threshold of that door, and then he looks around and he recognizes that he's in a really wide hall that goes all the way back from the courtyard towards the mountain. And, well, it has torches on the wall, but here's the thing. It's a long enough tunnel that Sam can't even see the end.
And I think he figures this is probably the way to the tower. He also figures
kind of must be, right? I mean,
yeah.
What else could it be at this point?
Exactly. And he also figures that Frodo is all the way up top, so might as well, just start walking. And so he does, and it's getting more and more frightening every step.
It's got to be, right? I mean, even the sound of his feet, by the way, seems loud to him. And remember, Sam's a hobbit, so he's a lot quieter than you or me, yet that is all he's hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, dead bodies, walls that look like they're dripping with blood, the fear, even that emptiness you mentioned. It's all becoming just a little bit too much more that he can handle. He's at his limit, which he's got some willpower, but he's been using a lot of that lately.
That's right. I mean, he has been expending all those points, and now he doesn't have enough to really deal with this. And yet he does, right? I mean, he actually does, because he does keep moving. Now, he talks about how he'd rather have a fight. I do love the ways, maybe not with too many people at once, please. Instead of this, and I love this phrase, hideous, brooding uncertainty.
2 amazing words to describe uncertainty. That is usually how I feel about those sorts of things. Yeah. And then,
I just want to know. I don't. No matter how bad it is, that's fine. Just tell me, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, he thinks of Frodo. His love for Frodo continues to be this driving force, his motivation that sort of enables him to go on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, remember in the last episode, we talked about his love for Frodo being the primary reason why he was able to defeat the temptation of the ring. That loyalty to his master. Absolutely.
That fellowship that we've been talking so much about in this trilogy about fellowship.
For years and years.
Yeah,
That's right.
Literal years. All right. Let's not keep this going too many more years. Alan, would you like to read the next passage for us?
I will indeed. He had passed beyond the torchlight, almost to a great arched door at the end of the passage, the inner side of the undergate, as he rightly guessed, when there came from high above a dreadful, choking shriek. He stopped short. Then he heard feet coming. Someone was running in great haste down an echoing stairway overhead. His will was too weak and slow to restrain his hand. It dragged at the chain and clutched the ring. But Sam did not put it on, for even as he clasped it to his breast, an orc came clattering down. Leaping out of a dark opening at the right, it ran towards him. It was no more than 6 paces from him when, lifting its head, it saw him. And Sam could hear its gasping breath and see the glare in its bloodshot eyes. It stopped short, aghast. For what it saw was not a small, frightened hobbit trying to hold a steady sword. It saw a great silent shape, cloaked in a gray shadow, looming against the wavering light behind. In one hand, it held a sword, the very light of which was a bitter pain. The other was clutched at its breast, but held concealed some nameless menace of power and doom. For a moment, the orc crouched. And then, with a hideous yelp of fear, it turned and fled back as it had come. Never was any dog more heartened when its enemy turned tail than Sam at this unexpected flight. With a shout, he gave chase. "Yes, the elf warrior is loose," he cried. "I'm coming. Just you show me the way up or I'll skin you." But the orc was in its own haunts, nimble and well-fed. Sam was a stranger, hungry and weary. The stairs were high and steep and winding. Sam's breath began to come in gasps. The orc had soon passed out of sight, and now only faintly could be heard the slapping of its feet as it went on and up. Every now and again it gave a yell, and the echo ran along the walls, but slowly all sound of it died away. Sam plodded on. He felt that he was on the right road, and his spirits had risen a good deal. He thrust the ring away and tightened his belt. "Well, well," he said, "if only they all take such a dislike to me and my sting, this may turn out better than I hoped. But anyway, it looks as if Shagrat, Gorbag, and company have done nearly all my job for me. Except for that little frightened rat, I do believe there's nobody left alive in the place." And I'll stop there with that thing that will then lead Sam to a terrible conclusion, but we'll get to that. Oh my goodness.
This is one of those moments where if you've ever seen like Arrested Development or television shows with narrators who like contradicting, it's like, well, I believe that's the only guy alive. It was not.
Right.
As a matter of fact.
Dear reader, it was not. Or the character then looks and breaks the fourth wall and looks right at you and is like, uh-oh.
All right, back to the book at hand. So Sam has gone so far down the hall that he has passed all of the torches. He's nearing the door. He hears this dreadful choking shriek from above him and one of the higher floors of the tower. So he stops, hears something. He's running in a hurry. He's coming down the set of stairs. And then boom. Yeah.
That's got to be terrifying at this point. Yeah. So now after he's expended all his will, he's got nothing left. His volition is totally spent and his hand involuntarily goes for the ring. He's in a way saved by the fact that this orc is pretty quick. You know, he doesn't get it on in time and the orc appears running in his direction and he's literally just a few steps away from Sam when it sees him. Close enough that Sam can see its bloodshot eyes and hear its breath when it stops in surprise at seeing Sam.
It's like one of those like horror movies where the villain is right behind you and just goes, shh, and then immediately just takes out the screaming person.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like that, but it's also not because the orc does not see Sam.
No.
It's not Sam that he sees this hobbit. It's not desperately trying to wield a sword, dropping it is this huge, terrifying, backlit shape with a sword in one hand that hurts to even look at.
Exactly.
Which, and something in his other hand that is even more terrifying, a nameless menace of power and doom.
Another great phrase from the professor. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's one thing for him to see that sword, to see Sting, right? A sword that dates back to the First Age from the Goblin Wars. Of course, the orcs are going to be terrified of that, just as they would have been of Glamdring and Orcrist. But can we talk about how much an ordinary, run-of-the-mill orc would fear the power of the One Ring? And it's not even being wielded at this point. But let's be honest, even a Nazgul would hesitate. Tolkien explains as much in his letters. Not for very long, granted. But an ordinary orc?
This is one of those moments that I think shows the power of like psychological warfare, because if you think about it, the orcs don't love Sauron, right?
Oh, no.
They are brainwashed. They are serving him
servants
out
of
of
fear.
fear.
Yeah.
They're not beloved in the way that other, leaders are, even evil leaders, right? There are charismatic evil leaders in fiction and in real life, of course.
I mean, maybe the mouth of Sauron serves him out of sort of adoration and a little bit of veneration.
Yeah.
And it's possible that's returned to some extent. But the orcs? Oh, no.
Yeah.
They're just,
You got to remember that everybody's doing this, serving Sauron, I should say. Everyone's serving Sauron out of like this own self-preservation instinct almost.
Because you stop serving Sauron and you die.
Yeah. And, as soon as they get a better offer, maybe they're out of here. The problem is no one else has come along.
No one's going to give the orcs a better offer.
Give you that. Yeah.
That is fair.
Yeah. So that's my thought on it is it's more fear than anything. So speaking of that fear, this orc is crouched and it turns in fear and it runs as fast as it can to where it came from. And Sam is following after, shouting at him.
It's like a dog has just tucked his tail between his legs and he's like, he's just running away. Yep.
Yeah.
So Sam, of course, is emboldened by this reaction. That's right, pal. You better run. He not only chases this guy, but he names himself the Elf Warrior. And he threatens to skin this poor orc if he doesn't show him the way up the stairs.
Oh, yeah. You gotta wonder. Those are some very,
That's
very
a bold claim there, sir.
Very bold claims. I was going to use more colorful language, but that's not this kind of podcast.
That's true. This is a family-friendly show sometimes.
Exactly. But also keep in mind, right? The orc knows this place.
Yeah.
It is in relatively okay shape, right? He's fed. He knows where he's at. He hasn't been stabbed by anybody or shot with arrows like so many of his kin.
That's a fair point. Sam, on the other hand, of course, has no clue about the layout of this place. He hasn't eaten quite possibly in days. In fact, he was more recently chosen to be a meal than to have one. And apparently, Sam's cardio is, well, it's about where mine is these days. He's starting to gasp after going up all these steep steps. I mean, that stair climber machine is brutal.
Oh God, what's the step count? Can we do a step count of
We'll get to a step count actually here in a little bit. We will.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. And then the orc disappears, first out of sight and then out of hearing.
Right.
And Sam feels like he's at least, headed in the right direction.
Well, it does feel like the stairs are really only one set of stairs, so keep on going up. Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah. He's feeling a bit more optimistic now. So he puts the ring away and starts talking to himself.
As Sam often does. Yeah, I mean, if everybody's as afraid of me and Sting, I mean, the rest of the police are not as scary, apparently. I'm just going to keep going, folks. Then this adventure is going to go just fine. Besides, most of them appear to be dead, right? They've all done my job for me. As we've noted before, evil often does.
Yeah, my apologies to Stuart, Andy, and Henry, the other members of the police.
That is a deep dive, sir.
Yeah, didn't think I knew those names off the top of my head, did you?
I thought you were too young for that, sir.
It's because I Googled it 2 seconds after Alan said anything. Don't tell him, podcast listeners.
Massive power.
Anyway. When Sam has finally expressed the thought that, maybe there's no one left alive in this place, it leads him down a very unpleasant conclusion. Oh, Frodo. What was that awful shriek?
Right.
Was it Frodo dying? And so he calls out Frodo's name, immediately starts sobbing, as I'm sure any of us would do, and he keeps going.
And the tower is in darkness now, right? I mean, save for a torch here and there at turns or at openings, but it's nowhere near as well lit as before. And here's where we get that step count, right? Sam loses count on this staircase. He's past 200 now. Now, after doing a little bit of research, that is about what you'd get to when you'd gotten to the 10th floor of the building. So we know he's nowhere near the top. As we talked about the last time, the height of this tower is about that of a 21-story building. So he's about halfway up. And yeah, he's already winded. So we're looking at a long struggle up the next 10 floors.
That's a lot of steps. And he's maybe thinking he hears voices.
Yep.
So he moves, that little bit quieter now. No more elf warrior on the loose. That bit has finished.
Yes, it has. There's more than one rat, right? It does call back to the part that we did read, except for that little frightened rat. So more than one rat remained alive. But then I'm going to have us skip another paragraph and have you pick up with Shagrat. Oh, you're going to get some Shagrat dialogue here.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Take us away, Don.
At first, Sam did not listen. He took a pace out of the eastward door and looked about. At once, he saw that up here the fighting had been fiercest. All the court was choked with dead orcs, or their severed and scattered heads and limbs. The place stank of death. A snarl, followed by a blow, and a cry sent him darting back into hiding. An orc voice rose in anger, and he knew it again at once. Harsh, brutal, cold. It was Shagrat speaking, captain of the tower.
You won't go again, you say? Curse you, Snaga, you little maggot. If you think I'm so damaged that it's safe to flaunt me, you're mistaken. Come here and I'll squeeze your eyes out like I did to Ratbug just now. And when some new lads come, I'll deal with you. I'll send you to Shelob.
They won't come, not before you're dead anyway, answered Snaga surlily. I've told you twice that Gorbag's swine got to the door first and none of ours got out. Logduff and Muzgash ran through, but they were shot. I saw it from a window, I tell you, and they were the last.
Then you must go. I must stay here anyway, but I'm hurt. The black pits take that filthy rebel Gorbag.
Shagrat's voice trailed off into a string of foul names and curses.
I gave him better than I got, but he knifed me, the dung, before I throttled him. You must go, or I'll eat you. News must get through to Lugburs, or we'll both be for the black pits. Yes, you too. You won't escape by skulking here.
I'm not going down those stairs again, growled Snaga. Be you captain or no?
Nah.
Keep your hands off your knife, or I'll put an arrow in your gut. You won't be a captain long when they hear about these goings-on. I've fought for the tower against those stinking Morgul rats, but a nice mess you two precious captains have made of things, fighting over the swag.
Man, I got to have you back every time we read Orc dialogue. That was so fun, man.
Thank you.
So fun.
I'm a theater kid and I do TTRPGs where orcs are one of the primary enemies. So I
love it. That
practice.
Was fantastic, man.
Thank
Seriously,
you.
Kudos to you.
It is fun going back and forth between the
"Hey, what are you doing?"
and this voice.
I had so much fun with Shagrat and Gorbag back in book 4. It was the same kind of thing. I could have done that all day. It was so much fun. So in the part that I had you skip, we do read that Sam finally did get to the top of the stairs, and that's when he starts to hear those voices close by.
Yeah, he's looking around. He's climbed all the way to the roof of that third tier, and it's this big open space. It's about 20 yards across with a low wall.
Right. And then we see this passage about the stair, the top of the stair being covered with a dome. Now, Christopher Tolkien in Sauron Defeated says that to the statement that the stairhead was covered by a small domed chamber in the midst of the roof, with low doors facing east and west, one manuscript adds both were open. However, Christopher goes on to say that this was left out of the second manuscript, and he doesn't know whether it was on purpose or not. He says perhaps inadvertently.
Wondering if perhaps it's done on purpose to begin with and then gotten rid of.
Might have been an accident. It might have been by choice. We don't know.
Hammond and Skull acknowledge this, and they say the words were not added to the 2004 edition, absent adequate proof of Tolkien's intent.
Exactly.
Still, the text definitely sure acts like the doors are opened, and Sam is easily looks both eastward and westward, so he can see what he sees.
Yeah.
So we've got eastward the plains of Mordor and Mount Doom, and then westward the base of that turret, and it's just a door about 10. It's an open door, just about 10 yards away.
Exactly. And that's where the voices are coming from. And that's when we picked up where you were reading. And we see that Sam's first instinct is not to listen to the voices. Instead, it's to look around to get an idea of what's happening up here.
Yeah, he's seeing what's been going around, through the bodies in the courtyard. Here is where the fighting was just awful. It was really bad.
Absolutely. I mean, there are dead orcs everywhere in comparison to what it was like in the courtyard. There are severed heads and scattered limbs and the smell of death, even though this is, outdoors, right? This is the top of the third level and it's open to the air, and it's still, the smell of death is just permeating this place.
Yeah, so he's hearing the orcs growl, and then there's a smack and a cry, and he hides again, and he hears a very angry orc.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows that voice because it's Shagrat.
That's right. Now, Shagrat is threatening a lesser orc, Snaga. Not necessarily his name. Certainly the text does seem to suggest it is. But the thing is, it's just a word that is a contemptuous term that the Uruk, the great orcs, use for these lesser orcs. It comes from a black speech word meaning slave or servant. And we actually see it in another place. One of Saruman's orcs was called Snaga way back in Book 3, Chapter 3. And that's when Ugluk says, "The cursed horse boys are going into us. But that's all your fault, Snaga. You and the other scouts ought to have your ears cut off. But we are the fighters. We'll feast on horse flesh yet. Or something better."
I like your orc too. That's
Ugluk's
fun.
a lot of fun, man. That whole Ugluk Grisnock. Oh, go back to, what would that have been? That would have been Book 3, so Season 5. Go back to those episodes for a lot of fun.
Even though it may not be his name, Shagrat, calling him a slave is, that's not really your
we can put that. That's not even on
friend.
the top 10 of this guy's problems.
Not even going to worry about it. No. Shagrat's threatening to literally squeeze his eyes out, just like he did that other orc. Yeah.
Which is most likely the dreadful choking shriek we heard earlier. I know I would probably let out a dreadful choking shriek if Shagrat were to gouge my eyes out with his thumbs.
Yeah, I feel like that would happen to anybody. Also, interesting sidebar, Hammond and Skull in their Reader's Companion, as usual, they tell us this interesting story coming from an unpublished letter in the Allen and Unwin archive.
Oh, I love the unpublished letters. These are so much fun. There's always little gems in here.
Apparently, a reader wrote in complaining about the vulgar use of "like I did" instead of "as I did," not only in this case, but apparently in a few.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, in a few other cases.
Man.
I have to say that's a bit much. Like, really? That's what made you mad? Not the, it feels like a strange hill to die on there.
It is.
Jeez.
I mean, come on. How weird is that? I'm going to write a letter to the professor because I don't like the fact that he wrote "like I did" instead of "as I did." Here's the thing. I think you can imagine Tolkien's response, but here's the fun part. You don't have to, because we have it right here. He says, "As for his pedantry about like or as, you may inform him, if you think there is any need to do so, that he is, in my opinion, being very silly." Since the use I love this being very silly. Since this use of like has been current in English for many centuries, especially in the freer and more conversational styles, I see no reason why dramatic propriety should be sacrificed to his prejudices. In any case, two of the speakers, Sam and an orc, are nowhere represented as using correct English. However, the notion that like is either vulgar or incorrect as a conjunction has no foundation either in the observed usage of so-called good writers, nor in the history of English syntax. No doubt, like other pedantic rules of correctness, it was invented by those ignorant of both. Ooh.
Boom.
I hope they sent that on to that guy.
Oh, I hope they did. I can't imagine they didn't. That is quite the verbal
there are
dressing
times
down.
I wish that Tolkien had been on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
The put-downs would have been brilliant.
Can you imagine? I think the only other, just personally, the only other like elderly white author that I know of is Philip Pullman, who regularly is active on Twitter, just getting into fights with people. And I'm often surprised he's as active as he is. But I can just see the professor just like, yeah, no, you're wrong.
And here's why you're wrong. Thread incoming. 1 of 12,
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
That's how he works. All right. Very good. That was fun. But back to this unfortunate orc being threatened with manual removal of his ocular organs.
Yeah, exactly. Because if it's not bad enough, he's threatened by being sent back to Shelob
Oh, yeah.
when Shagrat's crew gets back.
Yeah.
And then, this Snaga is pretty sure that posse isn't showing up anytime soon.
Yeah.
Certainly not in enough time to prevent Shagrat from bleeding out, because it seems that he is wounded.
He is. That's right. And remember, he tells Shagrat, look, Gorbag's guys got to the gate first. None of ours, right? That is the orcs from the Tower of Cirith Ungol got out. In fact, he's even able to name the two that we saw earlier that Sam saw got shot, Lagduf and Musgash.
Yeah, and that just means that he has to go,
Yeah.
because after all, Shagrat is not only injured, but he has to stay behind because of Frodo.
Right.
Yeah. So he curses Gorbag, and now we find out how Shagrat got injured, because he was stabbed, as one is.
Yeah, that'll do it every time. Hammond and Skull, though, and I love this little aside, they tell us something very interesting after this bit about Shagrat calling Gorbag the dung. Possibly by coincidence, Hammond and Skull say, one meaning of Old English gore is dung.
Oh.
I'm going to vote not coincidence, and dungbag is now headcanon.
Yeah, no, I'll agree to that one as well.
Shagrat and dungbag. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So Shagrat is commanding this Snaga after telling him that he just, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Go get news to Lugbors, which is Barad-dûr. And if you don't, we're both, we're destined for the pits. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So,
absolutely. The Black Pits, by the way, Tolkien does actually give us a very short definition in his unfinished index. They are, not surprisingly, dungeons of torment under Barad-dûr. They are not the employee break room.
What a surprise. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So Snaga obviously has no intention of doing that.
None.
That's like, yeah, no, and for this reason, I'm out. So Snaga, obviously, he's not going. There's no way he's going down those stairs again. Not with that elf warrior wielding that sword, carrying that terrifying jewelry. Like,
no chance. So he threatens Shagrat, right? I mean, after all, it sounds like Shagrat isn't exactly mobile. Who brings a knife to an arrow fight? I mean, this is where range helps, right? Snaga's like, yeah, trust me, I can shoot you long before you get that knife into me. Yeah.
Then he threatens Shagrat in a different way. You're not going to be captain for long once they, and that's they, capital T, the Nazgul, hear about what's happened. You both screwed up. That's you and Gorbag. You're fighting over the plunder. How dare you? What are you doing? What are you doing?
You're the captains. You were in charge, but you're probably not going to be in charge much longer once they hear. Yeah.
Well, let's find out what happens next. Alan, would you like to bring us to our final read of the episode?
I would. That's enough from you, snarled Shagrat. I had my orders. It was Gorbag started it, trying to pinch that pretty shirt.
Well, you put his back up being so high and mighty, and he had more sense than you anyway. He told you more than once that the most dangerous of these spies was still loose, and you wouldn't listen. And you won't listen now. Gorbag was right, I tell you. There's a great fighter about. One of those bloody-handed elves, or one of the filthy Tarks. He's coming here, I tell you. You heard the bell. He's got past the watchers, and that's Tark's work. He's on the stairs. And until he's off them, I'm not going down. Not if you were a Nazgul, I wouldn't. So, that's it, is it? Yelled Shagrat. You'll do this, and you'll not do that. And when he does come, you'll bolt and leave me. No, you won't. I'll put red maggot holes in your belly first. Out of the turret door, the smaller orc came flying. Behind him came Shagrat, a large orc with long arms that, as he ran crouching, reached to the ground. But one arm hung limp and seemed to be bleeding. The other hugged a large black bundle. In the red glare, Sam, cowering behind the stair door, caught a glimpse of his evil face as it passed. It was scored as if by rending claws and smeared with blood. Slaver dripped from its protruding fangs. The mouth snarled like an animal. As far as Sam could see, Shagrat hunted Snaga around the roof, until, ducking and eluding him, the smaller orc, with a yelp, darted back into the turret and disappeared. Then Shagrat halted. Out of the eastward door, Sam could see him now, by the parapet, panting, his left claw clenching and unclenching feebly.
He put the bundle on the floor and, with his right claw, drew out a long red knife and spat on it. Going to the parapet, he leaned over, looking down into the outer court far below. Twice he shouted, but no answer came. Suddenly, as Shagrat was stooped over the battlement, his back to the rooftop, Sam, to his amazement, saw that one of the sprawling bodies was moving. It was crawling. It put out a claw and clutched the bundle. It staggered up. In its other hand, it held a broad-headed spear with a short, broken haft. It was poised for a stabbing thrust. But at that very moment, a hiss escaped its teeth, a gasp of pain or hate. Quick as a snake, Shagrat slipped aside, twisted round, and drove his knife into his enemy's throat.
Got you, Gorbag, he cried. Not quite dead, eh? Well, I'll finish my job now.
He sprang onto the fallen body and stamped and trampled it in his fury, stooping now and again to stab and slash it with his knife. Satisfied at last, he threw back his head and let out a horrible, gurgling yell of triumph. Then he licked his knife and put it between his teeth, and catching up the bundle, he came loping towards the near door of the stairs. I'm just going to say I'm glad that Tolkien didn't write that yell of triumph and then arg in quotes, where I'd actually have to do a yell of triumph that was horrible and gurgling. I don't know that my throat could take it, but yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
No.
I'd prefer you keep your voice.
So do I.
You've got this profession that you do. It really requires you to sort of have...
It does. I should probably insure my voice, yes.
Yeah, 100%. So Shagrat's having absolutely none of this.
Oh,
this is...
You're not kidding.
Yeah, he had orders about the loot, and it's Gorbag's fault for trying to take it for himself.
Absolutely,
but
but Snaga still won't let it lie. I mean,
come on.
You probably should let it lie, Snaga, but you don't. He still blames Shagrat, accusing of being a prideful leader and not listening to his colleagues. I mean, honestly, it sounds like Snaga should be doing a TED Talk on cooperation in the C-suite or something.
I mean, he's not wrong,
no, he's not.
though, right? I mean, keep in mind, he's kind of right.
Oh, he is,
Gorbag,
absolutely.
Yeah, Gorbag did try to tell Shagrat there was a dangerous spy on the loose. He told him there's more than one, and then he's asking, the obvious question, who cut the cords she put around him, Shagrat? The same ones that cut the web, and then who stuck the pin in her ladyship? The same one, I reckon.
Yeah.
Where is he? Where is he, Shagrat? Come on, what are you doing?
That's right. And he followed that up quite clearly.
By all the signs, Captain Shagrat, I'd say there's a large warrior loose. Elf, most likely, with an elf sword, anyway. And an axe as well, maybe. And he's loose in your bounds, too, and you've never spotted him.
But Shagrat did not take him seriously, and this is all from Book 4.
You always did take a gloomy view. There may be other ways to explain the signs.
He's just ignoring him, right? I mean, this is Shagrat just blowing off what Gorbag says, but he's got to remember, Gorbag is at the same level as he is, right? He's a commander. He didn't get here because he's dumb as a bag of rocks.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Gorbag has even advised Shagrat, if I were you, I'd catch the big one that's loose before you send in any report to Lug Boors. It won't sound too pretty to say you've caught the kitten and let the cat escape. Great analogy.
Love that phrase.
Great analogy.
Love that phrase.
So
Absolutely.
good. So good.
It really is. So Snaga, right now we're back to current time, right? We were just quoting the old Gorbag Shagrat conversation from before. Snaga suspects that it could be an elf, which is what Gorbag thought. But he also suspects it might be a Tark. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Appendix F tells us that in this jargon, Tark means a man of Gondor, and it's descended from that Quenya word Tarkil.
Yeah, so he's thinking, maybe it's Faramir, which, I think we postulated.
Nice?
Yeah, that would be lovely. But no, it's just Sam. And, with the guy on the stairs, Snaga's like, not going there.
Not going to do it.
No chance. No chance.
Not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent at this juncture. Nope.
Mm-mm.
Shagrat, though, has had enough of this, right? He's just done with Snaga's excuses. I don't know what happens. We don't get to see it. But all we know is Snaga comes flying out the door. He's like, I'm out, man. And Shagrat follows behind, and he's carrying something.
Yeah. And keep in mind, He is definitely wounded.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
bleeding. We get a good look at him through that whole Sam perspective through his eyes.
Oh, man, you're not kidding. That's a creepy description, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. So Sam watches this hunt, but eventually Snaga makes his way back into the turret, and Shagrat gives up the chase.
That's right, he does. So Shagrat stops and looks over the parapet, right? He's shouting down into the courtyard, which is a long way down, to be fair. But there's no answer. None of his people are able to respond because, well, they're all dead.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah.
So Sam sees a body moving, grabbing at the bundle that Shagrat had been carrying.
I love how he grabs the bundle first.
Yeah. Priorities, right? You got your
That's
priorities.
Gotta grab that shiny shirt.
No, don't do it because, preparing the killing strike on Shagrat, but not happening this time.
No.
Not happening at all.
Shagrat hears him, right? He hears that little hiss, that intake of breath, or maybe some pain or whatever it was. He turns around and, well, let's just say he finishes the job, right? I mean, he stabs Gorbag, that's who it is, in the throat. And, well, not only does he finish the job, but Tolkien clearly does not spare us any of the gruesome details. This is a violent killing.
Yeah, and I can't help but think, as I so often do, about World War I and remembering that most of the in-trench fighting that wasn't just like No Man's Land, bayonets, and you take the bayonet and you literally, you know, to not get too into detail, you use the sharp knife attached to the gun for hand-to-hand combat. And, I can't imagine what Tolkien saw, but I definitely see the influences here in that, for sure.
This is over-the-top cruelty with Shagrat.
Yes.
I mean, he could kill Gorbag, and he does, but then he just, has to make a dance out of it and, just turns this into a completely over-the-top scene of violence. I mean, this is Quentin Tarantino directing this would have been classic, right?
Yeah. That's not a bad way to describe it, because that's almost exactly
what we get for sure.
What we get, yeah. So he picks up the bundle, goes to the stairs, where Sam is currently hiding.
Yeah, that's a problem, and we're going to see exactly how Sam reacts next week. Dun,
the tension.
That's right. I have been wondering, Don, just exactly what is in that bundle that Shagrat's been carrying around, the one that Gorbag desperately tried to grab onto before he met his untimely end. And you know what? I am convinced it's Bartleman's bag. I mean, after all, Bartleman has been looking for it. It has been misplaced. What does Bartleman have for us tonight, Don?
I was wondering where that was going, and I'm so glad I figured it out so quickly.
Yeah, all right, I'm sure you did. I mean, you know when the show's over, that's what we're doing. We're finding a way to get
of course. All right, we have a little bit of a long one tonight, but certainly appropriate given the context. Zachary A. writes in saying that his question pertains to the physical appearance of orcs in Tolkien's Legendarium. He goes on to wonder if the way that Jackson's films portrayed the orcs is accurate. He wonders this because, in his words, of the many times we see members of the company mistaken for orcs throughout Lord of the Rings, while Tolkien does literally use the word hideous in the Silmarillion, Zachary wonders if Tolkien is using that term to describe more the idea of corruption of Iluvatar's children than the actual appearance itself.
Huh. Okay.
Fascinating question.
It really is.
I love that.
It really
love
is.
that.
Well, I think that the first thing we need to do is go ahead and look at the passages that Zachary is referencing here. And in the question, he actually does quote the passages for us to sort of help us out, or at least point us in the right direction. The first passage that he references is in the Riders of Rohan. Éomer first encounters the three hunters, and he says, "At first I thought that you yourselves were orcs, but now I see that it is not so." And apparently the Rohirrim might be easily confused, because in the chapter The Uruk-hai, Pippin also wonders, how will they know that we are not orcs? I don't suppose they've ever heard of hobbits down here.
And then there's Treebeard in the eponymous chapter, who says to Merry and Pippin, "But if I had seen you before I heard your voices, if I had seen you before I heard you, I should have trodden on you, taken you for little orcs, and found out my mistake afterwards." So like when he cleaned them out from between his toes, apparently, seems to be the case.
Next time I get to pedicure, I will wonder what these things were.
Yeah. And though he doesn't cite the passage, let's also not forget Frodo and Sam will very shortly be making their way disguised themselves as orcs for a little bit. True. So does this mean that they look like regular folks? Do they look like hobbits? Maybe. maybe?
No, I'm sorry, Zachary. As interesting as it might be to wonder if the difference is really just that internal nature of orcs being, right? This sort of corruption, and like you talked about, the idea of hideous being the corruption of an Iluvatar's child. The fact is they are most definitely physically hideous in appearance as well. And we need to take some looks at the descriptions of orcs throughout, including one we just read tonight of Shagrat. In the red glare, Sam, cowering behind the stair door, caught a glimpse of his evil face as it passed. It was scored as if by rending claws and smeared with blood. Slaver dripped from its protruding fangs. The mouth snarled like an animal. Sam sees his left claw clenching and unclenching feebly, and with his right claw drew out a long red knife and spat on it. So fangs and claws, there's one thing for sure that hobbits don't have, thankfully. Now I'm trying to picture a hobbit with fangs and claws, and that's creepy as heck.
That looks kind of awesome for like a Halloween costume.
I know, doesn't
maybe.
it? Like some sort, yeah. Now, we also know that orcs are generally not very tall. In fact, back when the company were trying to leave Moria after Gandalf fell, we read about a huge orc chieftain. He's described as that, a huge orc chieftain, and how he is almost man high. So we're talking about maybe a 5-foot tall orc. And that's a huge one. They just aren't that tall. And then in the chapter, the Uruk-hai, Grishnak is described as a short, crook-legged creature, very broad and with long arms that hung almost to the ground. And he was accompanied by a couple score of orcs that were described in the exact same way, very broad with long arms. And even Shagrat's arms are described in this chapter as having reached to the ground when he was running while crouching.
So we can also have a look at the letters and some bits out of the History of Middle-earth to add more to this. In letter 210...
Ooh, drink up.
Yeah. Tolkien says, the orcs are definitely stated to be corruption of the human form seen in elves and men. They are, or were, squat, broad, flat-nosed, sallow-skinned, with wide mouths and slant eyes. In an essay called Myths Transformed, which is located in Morgoth's Ring, which is volume 10 of Histories of Middle-earth, Tolkien says that they're really animals. The orcs were beasts of humanized shape to mock men and elves, deliberately perverted, converted into a more close resemblance to men.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we go on, because I know there's some stuff in Lord of the Rings there as well, I just want to just really quick clarify. That was, of course, one of Tolkien's earlier visions. Tolkien, as we do know, did shift what he thought about like the origin of orcs many times. And we still don't know really where he landed. We can't say with any certainty what Tolkien thought on that. I mean, we certainly know where he landed at the end of his life. But in the meantime, we do know that this physical description still holds, made to look a little bit like men, but not like men.
Yeah. And then going back to Lord of the Rings, remember when Merry describes the half-orcs as horrible, man-high, but with goblin faces, sallow, leering, squint-eyed.
Yeah.
So the man-high bit is because they're only half-orcs, but clearly orc faces are described, setting aside that leering look, as sallow and squint-eyed. And of course, sallow meaning an unhealthy yellow or even a pale brown.
Ew. So, I mean, here's the thing. There is a number of vast differences in physical appearance between elves, men, dwarves, and even hobbits on the one hand, and orcs on the other. So I think what we need to do here is just sort of address the passages that Zachary mentions, right? And try to explain maybe why orcs were mistaken for other people or people were mistaken for orcs. I think in that very first passage about Éomer, he simply didn't expect to meet anybody other than orcs out there in the wilds of Rohan. I mean, after all, A, they were chasing orcs, and B, nobody else is out here. So he runs into the three hunters. He's going to think momentarily, there are three vaguely humanoid-shaped creatures, so they must be orcs. Oh, wait, no, they're not. I don't think he had to get within a few yards to see Aragorn's eyes to tell the difference. I mean, it was very clear very quickly. But he would say that because he's trying to say, look, your lives are in danger here. I was about to kill you because I had to assume you were orcs.
Yeah.
Glad you're not. But in the meantime, I'm still threatening you, and it's going to be a while before I trust you. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a level of trust you need to get to.
Certainly. Pippin's question, by the way, is actually just rhetorical and hypothetical. They're not actually mistaken for orcs by the Rohirrim. He just wonders if they will be. So I'm not sure that passage really supports that theory, but it is still an interesting theory, and I'm glad that the question has been asked.
Yeah, and they are almost mistaken by orcs, by
true.
Treebeard.
That is true,
that seems to be, again, a matter for who Treebeard almost expects to see. Because after all, the Rohirrim don't show up in Vanguard. They're not traipsing through on a nice little picnic or anything.
No.
And Treebeard, doesn't even know who hobbits are.
That's true. You're
Yeah,
right.
because the Rohirrim, they're not, having a picnic in Fangorn, so
No,
Treebeard
no.
doesn't know what a hobbit is. And all he sees is this short humanoid creature, so obviously
Must be an orc.
Right,
Right. I mean, the
must be
orcs
an
he
orc.
knows, the hobbits, he has to add them to the song. Well, once he gets the other ents to approve the addition to the song. Yeah.
Yeah, until there's they're not squat, crooked-legged, or long-armed. Maybe I should not squish those.
Maybe I shouldn't.
Those people.
Maybe I shouldn't. And obviously something about their voice. So I think in that case, it's very similar to what Éomer is talking about. It's what he would have expected to see. He certainly wasn't expecting to see, in this case, Treebeard wasn't expecting to see hobbits because he doesn't even know what they are.
Absolutely.
But I like the question because, there really is some element to the fact that what we find so disturbing and so terrifying in orcs is their similarity. It is the fact that they are a mockery of men and elves. And I think that is why they're so much more terrifying to us.
Yeah, because they're us, but not us. It's the worst parts of our being, of ourselves,
Very
of our
much
everything.
so. Very much so. But yeah, at the same time, there are definitely physical differences. And sure, there are differences amongst the different breeds of orcs. We know that the Uruks are larger. They're also described as black, which, then we can get into the whole, issue of race in Tolkien as well. But the fact is they are described in a way that, they have physical characteristics that are not the same as the rest of elves, men, and hobbits, let alone dwarves.
There is that difference that you need to sort of acknowledge, because without it, The Lord of the Rings, I think, would be a very different book if the orcs didn't exist and it was just other humans.
Oh my
I
goodness,
think
it sure would.
that defeats a lot of obviously the fantastical parts of the book, but I think as a commentary on industrialization and warfare and fellowship and camaraderie amongst the human race.
Agreed.
That's a very different story.
And it's one of the reasons why Tolkien struggled so much with orcs, because he did, he knew that at the end of the day, he knew that Sauron, or that Morgoth, who was involved in the creation of the orcs, could not have created them out of nothing, right? He could not have created sentient beings. I mean, even Aule himself, when he created the dwarves, didn't create them as sentient, independent beings. They would have taken the blow from his hammer when he offered them to Iluvatar. When Iluvatar gave them the secret fire and gave them that independence and that sentience, that's when they flinched. And we know that story. It's a fantastic story. He goes, yeah, okay, that's great. I gave them this life, but they're going to have to go to sleep for a while because I'm not going to let them come before the elves.
Bye.
So have a nap. But, we know that Morgoth can't do that, right? Morgoth can't give them, he can't give orcs that sort of independent sentience. So he has to take creatures that already have sentience and then twist them. Well, then that left Tolkien in this very uncomfortable position. All right, if they're twisted elves, which is what the canonical story is in the Silmarillion, well, then do they really have Fear that go back to Mandos? And do they get rehoused as elves? What happens? I mean, this is really, really complicated. Okay, maybe it's better if they're men because then they can leave the circles of the world. But then we still run into problems because what about their ability to be redeemed? And Tolkien struggled with this forever. We're not going to answer this today in a mailbag segment, right?
I was going to say you could have a whole podcast episode on just that question.
Just that. Maybe even 2 or 3, because there's so much material that Tolkien wrote trying to work his way through this problem. So I do like sort of how this question really kind of pokes and prods at that and says, think about this. Think about this. What really is the difference between orcs and the good forces of Middle-earth? And there are physiological, anatomical, biological differences, but at the end of the day, they're either corrupted men or corrupted elves at some stage.
Yeah, at some very base level, it's that's us, but slightly
the worst of us.
Off. The worst of us.
And Tolkien talks about that in his letters, right? He talks about how in World War II, for instance, he sees plenty of orcs on both sides. Yeah. He's not afraid to use his creation as an analogy to the real world, even though he didn't make his creation an analogy to the real world. Good stuff.
No chance. All right.
Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But please be sure to join us again next week when Shagrat does what brave Sir Robin would do. He runs away.
We are full of deep cuts tonight. That's a Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Bravely bold Sir Shagrat rode forth from Cirith Ungol. He was not afraid to die. Oh, brave Sir Shagrat. Yeah, we could go on.
I respect that. I respect that choice. That was a
not
choice
afraid
you
to
made
die
just
in nasty,
now.
nasty ways.
Oh my God. Now, what I would not give to have some sort of Prancing Pony podcast Monty Python movie watch night, because I feel like
It's been done before.
Has it?
Yeah, in our Discord. One of the things that happens in our Discord channel, it's not an official event. It's an unofficial event. Katie often organizes it. She's our Patreon community coordinator. We do these movie nights. So maybe 15, 20 people gather to watch a movie on whatever streaming service, and they just queue it all up. So they're watching it at the same time while they're chatting in voice chat or in text. And we have done Holy Grail before, and it is a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Well, thank you
Not
to
as
Katie.
much fun as us watching The Princess Bride live together at PPP Moot with 150 people in the same room while Sean and I did commentary. That's great.
The dream. That's the dream.
Yeah, we'll do Holy Grail next time, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you to Katie. I think we've also got some people to thank.
We do.
That are also on Team PPP.
Mm-hmm.
Editor Jordan Randalls, Barleyman Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
That's right. And speaking of the website, please be sure to check out theprancingponypodcast.com. You're going to get our show notes there. You'll find our outtakes, some of which may have come from this very episode.
Oh, yeah.
Prancing Pony Ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch, including some all-new chapter art designs from Megan.
Ooh, very excited for that one. You'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast is a podcast about books.
Yes,
so
it
if you're
is.
interested in a book that we have mentioned on this show, you'll find the link for it in our library. We get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we do thank you for that.
Indeed, we do. We also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdan's contribution tier. I'm going to start with Demay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Karen in the UK, and Zaksu in Illinois.
There's also Sarah from New Jersey, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, Erica in Texas, Carson in Oklahoma, Keith in Alabama, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen in Massachusetts, Christiana from Ohio, John from Japan, Olivia from London, and Jackson in Tennessee. Thank you all very much for your support.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, your horrible gurgling yells of triumph to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. On second thought, never mind. If you want your voice literally heard, but not your horrible gurgling yells of triumph, send us audio of your question. Again, no gurgling yells. By visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod, where you can record your question for us.
Please be sure to email the question to Barliman, though.
Yeah.
Even though Barliman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to get through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we are able.
Indeed. As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Until next time, folks, thank you so much for joining. I have been Don Marshall, the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy. I'm going to go record a horrible gurgling yell of triumph.
Oh.
I'll use a fake voice so you won't even know it's me.
I'm sure I won't.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.